Hello, Canucks fans. It is game day, and we are ready to bring you a beautiful episode of Canucks Conversation. Harmon is in Edmonton. I'm in the apartment. It's a remote edition of Canucks Conversation because, of course, it is a game day, and Canucks Conversation is always brought to you by the 2024 Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X is Toyota's brand new all-electric SUV designed to go the distance for you and your family. The BZ4X is packed with Toyota's coolest tech, but it still has that trusty SUV feel. Wow, you know and love. And even though it's electric, it's capable of effortlessly conquering any terrain, whether it's rain, snow, mud, or your friends' questionable post-game recaps. The BZ4X will get you through it all. I'm playing a little hurt today. People might be able to tell. A little short of breath. I'm not feeling 100%. I talked about it yesterday. Not feeling great, but I did take a COVID test and I don't have COVID, even though I was pretty sure of it. I was pretty sure. Had to have something. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, not feeling the best today, but we're going to power through and it's going to be a good episode.
Yeah, I guess you took a maintenance day, but are showing up to play for the game.
That's exactly it. I didn't attend morning skate today, but I did. I am ready to go for the game. You were at the actual morning skate, Harm. So let's break it all down. We're going to be joined by Jeff Paterson in about 10, 15 minutes here. Let's break it all down. Our opening segment is brought to you by our friends over at Four Winds Brewing. Actually, it's the Light the Lamp contest because it's a game day. So Vancouver is playing Edmonton tonight, and we want to know who's going to score the first goal for Vancouver. If you nail it, you can win a $25 gift card to the Four Winds Tap Room located at 72nd and River Road in Delta. Enter by following us on social media. Keep an eye out for today's show clip and comment who you think will light the lamp and score the first goal tonight. Winners will be contacted directly. Check us out at Canucks Army on Twitter, at CanucksArmy.com on Instagram, and Canucks Army on Facebook. And make sure you ask about Four Winds Light Lager at your local liquor store or have some delivered to your front door through the online shop at fourwindsbrewing.ca. Okay, Harm, I am going with Brock Besser. He's gonna keep it up. He's gonna stay hot.
I'm gonna go with Connor Garland.
I like it. Good picks. Okay, you were at morning skate today. Nikita Zadorov had a lot to say. We're gonna get into that in a second, but for the Oilers, it looks like they might go with 7 defensemen here. And of course, Calvin Pickard gets the start for them. Let's focus on the Oilers quickly here. Their lineup changes and them going with Calvin Pickard. Doesn't surprise me that they're going with Calvin Pickard tonight.
Yeah, so because the Canucks practiced yesterday and because they don't have any major lineup decisions outside of course, factoring for life without Carson Soucy, it's the Oilers side where they didn't skate yesterday, and we were waiting to see what they were going to do on a few key decisions. Pickard obviously is first goalie off the ice. He's going to get the start. And the interesting thing with Broberg and the Oilers potentially going 11 forward, 7 defensemen is that Matthias Ekholm missed morning skate now. Chris Knobloch was asked about it, called it a maintenance day. But you wonder if Ekholm is a little bit banged up after taking some big hits, especially early in game 3. And we know how crucial of a cog he is from the back end on that top pair. It's also interesting that the Oilers, if they were just looking to use a placeholder, right? Like if a guy misses morning skate, normally they'll just use a placeholder for that one pair, like have maybe Broberg with Bouchard and the other pairs are the same. Whereas at morning skate, it was fascinating that the Oilers had completely different D pairs. Like Nurse was with Desharnais, Kulak was with Bouchard, right? So that's another question mark is I don't know what they're going to do with their blue line tonight, what they're going to do with their D pairs. What is Ekholm's health going to look like? That's a major question mark from an Oilers perspective.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And people are talking about the adjustments that they're making with their lineup. Obviously, McDavid and Drasaitl are going to get split up. You and I talked about how they basically needed to do that when we were talking yesterday. And again, you talked to Chris Knobloch about it. You asked him the question, and he admitted you got to split these two guys up. How much does that change things for the Canucks from their perspective, that different look? Because I don't think you change much, personally, not only just because when those two were together, you still managed to win a game. Like, the Oilers used their, I don't know, maybe their break glass in case of emergency. That's what it's been all year for them, that line. The Oilers already used that. So for the Canucks, you're just going to keep doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah, and it just means that the Oilers might be more than a one-line team. They might be a two-line team now, which doesn't change a lot from an X's and O's perspective, but you're just going to need to be prepared for a potentially deeper lineup where It is also interesting though. Even if they go 11-7, one of the interesting pros that Knobloch brought up about potentially going down that route is that he can double shift McDavid and Draisaitl. So I wonder if those guys get double shifted, are they going to get some double shifts together? What do their minutes look like? Because for as much as Knobloch wants to say, we can't play these guys 30 minutes every night, and how splitting them up is a way to reduce their minutes. Game 4, like, you can't afford to go down 3-1. Like, this is the most important game of the series for them at this point. Massive swing game. You win this, you get back on level terms. If not, that's a massive 3-1 deficit to come back from when you aren't even sure about your goaltending position. So given the stakes, given that they may go 11-7, and Knobloch this morning is already talking about potentially double shifting those guys, that's another thing to keep in mind, is those guys might still push into the high 20-minute mark in terms of their ice time. And again, that's where you start to wonder if fatigue is going to be a factor. The top line, and this is where I'm surprised they didn't go to it in game 1 when they initially decided to split McDavid and Draisaitl, was they've got RNH up on that top line with McDavid and Hyman. As a trio in the regular season, that was one of the best lines in the NHL. I don't understand why they used Matthias Janmark in that role in game 1. So, that top line, you expect them to not miss a beat, even though they don't have Draisaitl on it. And then the bigger question mark is just, can Draisaitl drive a line at center, considering he has been a little bit banged up in the series, and it sounds like the other winger that might step up to play with them, we didn't see it in line rushes, but Knobloch fielded a question about it and seemed to hint that Dylan Holloway might get an elevated top 6 opportunity to play with Draisaitl and Kane. Knobloch talked about how he likes how Holloway has managed the puck well, how he has some speed and tenacity, and in the LA series scored a couple of goals. So that's going to be interesting to see, as well as how is Holloway going to fit in the top 6.
Okay, let's get to the Canucks' point of view on all of this, Harm. Excuse me. Noah Juulsen slots in for Carson Soucy, almost a Nikita Zadorov, because we're going to talk about him. Carson Soucy, of course, is going to serve his 1-game suspension for his cross-check on Connor McDavid. We'll talk about that in a second here. But yes, Noah Juulsen is the one that slots in, and it looks like Nikita Zadorov is going to move up to play with Myers, while Ian Cole's going to shift the left side on a pairing with Juulsen. And then, of course, you've still got Quinn Hughes and Filip Hronek on the top pair. And no surprise, Archer Shilovs is making his 7th straight start in goal for the Canucks tonight. Again, like I said, no surprise there, and no changes to the forward lines.
Yeah. And so when we discuss what the Canucks are going to be missing in Soucy, I think when you look back, break down each game, he was outstanding in game 1, right? He had a pair of assists, 10 minutes head against McDavid, where that line didn't generate anything, right? From their last couple games were had some lows, right? Game 2, I think he struggled. McDavid dropped at a line, sort of ate them up. Soucy struggled to break the puck. Game 3 was sort of a bend but don't break type of performance, where Soucy and Myers basically spent the entire game in the defensive zone, right? They were outshot 11-1 at 5-on-5, but they surrendered just 2 high danger chances. So they held the foot down, even though it felt like they were under siege at times. And I think the main takeaway when I sort of look at what Soucy has brought to the table so far in this series is he's defended well overall, like away from the puck. You've been able to trust him. I don't think his transition game has been very effective. So that's why he's had to spend so much time defending, when obviously in an ideal world, you'd like to get the puck up the ice and make sure that you have the puck a little bit more often against the McDavid line. And so with Zadorov stepping up, the biggest question is obviously going to be, how are those guys going to mesh stylistically? Because compared to Soucy, I think you can argue that Zadorov's a better skater. He has played superior hockey in these playoffs, but Soucy's defensive IQ is a little bit higher. His positioning is a little bit sharper. The passing lanes that he takes away. And then stylistically, Zadorov and Myers both like to skate the puck. They both like to make plays. They have to make sure that they're covering for each other, because the margin for error, if one of those guys turns a puck over, or if one of those guys wants to pinch up the wall, is going to be so slim if they end up in minutes against McDavid or in minutes against Draisaitl. And then from Zadorov's perspective too, this is going to be a test of how does he fare against tougher matchups, because He's been terrific this post, but this series is only played 11 minutes head-to-head against McDavid 5-on-5, and in Game 2, he did have the turnover off McDavid forecheck that the Oilers scored on. I don't think performance-wise that I'm too worried about the Zadorov-Myers pair. The bigger question is just, how is Cole Juleson going to fare as a third pair? Like, how much are you going to trust those guys? Because Cole, as we know, has struggled this series, and Juleson, for as solid as he was in the regular season, he's only played 2 games in his last 6 weeks, so he might be shaking off some rust.
Yep. And again, Oilers have last change. The Canucks are 4-0 on the road in these playoffs, so we'll see what ends up happening tonight. Let's not make them wait any longer. Let's get to our pal, Jeff Paterson, who is also in Edmonton, and he is brought to you by our friends at Greta. Come out tonight for our Game 4 viewing party and support our charity partner, the Day One Dads Impact Foundation. With a silent auction and the game on multiple screens, it's sure to be a good time, so come on down tonight to Greta Bar YVR. It's your spot to chill, whether the Canucks are at home or on the road. Just a 10-minute walk from Rogers Arena. Come sit, stay, have a good time at Greta Bar YVR. They got the games. Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time at Greta, so make sure you come out tonight to our away game viewing watch party. It's going to be a good time. Okay, let's get to Jeff Paterson, who joins us from Edmonton. He got to see the Nation HQ offices. We'll see. I'll tell you in a second if he's coming to us from there. No, he is not. He's in a fancy hotel. Beautiful. Jeff, how's your time in Edmonton been?
It's a glorious day here today. Harm can back me up on that one. And people probably don't want to hear that, but I think this is about as close to a postcard kind of day as you can get in the Alberta capital. It was smoky when we arrived here from the forest fires, but that's all cleared out. And I went for a nice walk down along the river valley. It was actually a spectacular day here, but we're here for business, and that's a big hockey game tonight. And really looking forward to it. And I heard you guys talking about the morning skate this morning. I will add that a little bit of intrigue on the Canucks side, in as much as Rick Tocchet suggested that there might be a lineup change. Now, at first, I thought he was kind of hinting at Noah Juleson, but we all know that Carson Soucy's not going to play. But Noah Strang from Daily Hive came at him directly and just said, like, Juleson's in. He said yes, but earlier he had said that he was contemplating a lineup change, which I would imagine would be to his forward group. So we'll see. We saw he made 2 the other night, winning lineup. I'd be surprised if he made a coach's decision to go away from the 12 skaters that he used the other night, but he does have some extras. Obviously, Höglander is here. Vasily Podkolzin's here as a black ace. Phil DiGiuseppe's not. He's back in Vancouver. He said that he would rejoin the hockey club for practice tomorrow if they have a practice. But, so he's got some options, but I would just think that you'd stick with the lineup that got the job done on Sunday night here in game number 3.
J-Pat, when you look at the Oilers splitting up McDavid and Drasaitl game tonight, do you think that was the right decision from their end? And what do you think that means from the Canucks perspective in terms of how they're going to have to potentially adjust?
Yeah, I mean, this all strikes me as Chris Knobloch getting a little antsy and making some decisions here based on the series and where it is, and his team is trailing, and recognizing that they really can't afford to go down 3-1. I mean, could they come back from a 3-1 deficit? Sure, but the odds are stacked against them at that point. So their best chance is getting a win here on home ice tonight and sending it back to Vancouver in 2-2 tie. I mean, what a luxury to have as a head coach, to be able to split those guys, but also know that you can put them back together for a turbocharge at any time. They have been an absolute handful for the Canucks to try to control. Now, the Canucks have done a nice job of keeping them to the perimeter. And really, when you look at McDavid in the series, guys, 5 points, but 4 of them came in game 2. So the 2 other games, the Canucks have really limited him, and they've forced him to play on the outside. And that's how Rick Tocchet wants it. And we'll see if they can continue to do that. We'll see if McDavid's able to find ways to get to the inside, as the breakaway goal in game 2. But, that's it for him. And when I look at the series, the fact that only 3 Oilers forwards have scored, that their defensemen have generated more goals through 3 games than their forward group. And that's a forward group that includes 2 of the best players in the National Hockey League and Zach Hyman, who got off to an incredible start in the series, but they've got nothing, absolutely nothing from anybody below those big 3. So I think that's part of why they're going away from the stacked lines to start this hockey game, is they need others to get involved. Like, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has a couple of points, but on the power play, Evander Kane. Boy, I thought Knoblauch was really trying to butter up a guy like Dylan Holloway. Clearly, he knows him better than I do, but watching through 3 games, I haven't seen an awful lot from him. Warren Fogle, on and on it goes. Like, it can't just be their big 3. I mean, it's an incredible big 3 that can carry the day on a lot of nights, but over a 7-game series, you need some others. And, just the Canucks would say the same, that they've got some guys that they'd like to see contribute as well. But the Canucks have goals from 6 forwards at least through 3 games, and the Oilers have just 3. So, that's one of the storylines absolutely that's emerging here. The other one for me is the Oilers have 4 power play goals on 8 attempts, 50%, incredible. But the Canucks have 3 power play goals of their own. So the net difference is 1. 3 games into this series, the Oilers have outscored the Canucks by 1 on the power play. That is a massive win for the Vancouver Canucks when I thought about the way this series is going to shape up. And along those lines as well, the Canucks have had more power plays than the Oilers. Like, I didn't know if I could live in a world where that was even a possibility through 3 games, but power plays are 9-8. And when you think of some of the penalties, a too many men on the ice call 40 seconds into the series, and Pia Suter putting a puck over the glass, those are 2 of the Oiler power plays. So really, the Canucks have done a pretty nice job of, sticking to their systems, not taking needless penalties. And I mean, best way to limit that Oiler power play, obviously, is to stay out of the box. So I think, on those fronts, the Canucks have done a pretty nice job of sticking to their game plan. But again, any night is an opportunity for McDavid to explode, to, the Canucks to run into some penalty problems, things to go sideways. But, the way that they're playing, the way they're locked in right now, man, they look like a confident bunch. And I think they believe that they can leave town here with both games in Edmonton and a 3-1 series lead.
Speaking of the power play, what have you liked about Vancouver's man advantage? Because like you said, they've got 3 goals. It seems like they're finally getting going for the first time, maybe since the All-Star break.
Yeah, and it was funny listening to JT this morning after the morning skate. I mean, he was dumping all over the power play. He said, hey, we were opportunistic the other night. I mean, there's an element of that. I liked the puck movement, showing some different looks of, hard rims on the power play to get the Oilers running around, move the puck from one side to the other. There was the double, in fact, that really stretched the Oilers out of their defensive formation and allowed Brock Besser to find that soft spot on the ice. Lindholm obviously stepping in the deflection the other night, that both of his goals in tough areas on the ice. I like that. So, I guess I'm a little more bullish on their power play right now after watching the Nashville series, where it was such a struggle for the Canucks to score. 2 power play goals in the Nashville series, both came in the same game, and here they're up to 3 power play goals. So, their power play has been fine. It's just that it's kind of been, gauged against what's on the other side, and that's the greatest power play that the National Hockey League has ever seen. And again, it's 4 for 8 in this series. So the Oilers have done their thing on the power play. They have 2 5-on-5 goals from forwards. Connor McDavid on a breakaway, and Zach Hyman with that sort of knuckle puck that made it 4-1 in the first game. So again, give the Canuck team a ton of credit for the way they're defending. It may not look great on the shot clock ultimately, but the Canucks have shown they're pretty comfortable in those situations, that there isn't this panic threshold, that they're, they have the way that they know sort of this path forward to success. And, did it blow up in their face a little bit in game 2? Yeah, because they got the lead and they thought they could do what they do on a lot of nights. Didn't work for them that night. They lost in overtime, but otherwise, Canucks have done a pretty nice job when they get out in front and being able to extend their lead the other night. I thought that was huge as well. So let's see how many power plays they get ultimately, and then can they continue to cash in, because this was an Oiler penalty kill that didn't give a single goal against the LA Kings. Canucks have already broken them for 3, and let's be honest, some of that's on the back of the goaltender that's going to be watching from the end of the bench tonight.
Let's talk about that, Jeff. No surprise for me that they're starting Calvin Pickard. It looked like there was some discussion going on, in various hockey circles, people talking about if they should go with Skinner or Pickard. Captain Canuck in our YouTube live chat is pointing out that not only has Pickard never played an NHL playoff game, he's played 5 playoff games through his entire junior and AHL career. That's it. 5 playoff games for him. He steps in tonight. Help us size up the goaltending battle.
Yeah, I mean, this is now one of these storylines. A third stringer who has delivered for the Vancouver Canucks, and a backup and a career journeyman who, rediscovered his NHL career. He's a great story. And credit to him. He came out, he met the media, he spoke on game day this morning. The Oilers allowed their starting goaltender to, this massive throng in the locker room, down-to-earth guy, appreciative of the opportunity, and just said all the right things about approaching it like it's just another game, but clearly it's not. And that's where I come back to the coach. This kind of feels a little bit desperate, but at the same time, you're not getting saves from the guy that you had hoped and the organization had hoped and the city and fan base had believed in. And here we are with McDavid and Drasaitl leading the playoffs in scoring again. And what's the biggest issue in Edmonton? Oh, yeah, it's goaltending. Like, some things never change. And so, it's a tough spot for Calvin Pickard, but it was a tough spot for Artur Silovs. And goalies are a strange lot. Like, he might rise to the challenge and take the net from Stuart Skinner. Like, who knows? Skinner certainly hasn't done enough to earn the confidence of his group. So, I think if you're Pickard, you have to look at it as an opportunity. You can't be worried about what might happen if things don't go your way. I think you have to just look at this as an opportunity to put your stamp on a series here. He got in for 16 minutes the other night, didn't face many shots, and he said it was just good to, actually be in the environment there rather than sitting on the end of the bench, to be in and sort of seeing it from ice level. And so, he's going to try and draw on anything that he can. But really, I mean, his best inspiration might be the guy 200 feet away, in as much as Artur Silovs was thrown into a really tough situation in Nashville on the road, delivered victories there. And here is Calvin Pickard. This is what these guys train for, right? Like, he wants the net. It's always a numbers game with goaltenders, and he's got his chance tonight. So we'll see. But, if I'm the Canucks, pepper this guy. Like, make him make some saves. Like, don't ease him into this series like you did in the third period. They didn't need more offense the other night, but it starts from scratch. It's 0-0. Test him. Make him make some saves. That's like, so I am kind of curious to see, what kind of game plan we get from the Vancouver Canucks, because this guy obviously doesn't have this body of work, as you just mentioned. And, I saw, was it Brandon Assel out in Abbotsford that tweeted out that, these two goalies faced off last year in an American Hockey League playoff game. So not that that's going to weigh on either of them, but a tiny little bit of history there. I just, let me add as well, and this goes off the topic of goaltending, but like, it's such a hot topic here in Edmonton, as you can appreciate. But so is this whole idea of, where's the secondary scoring and all these, like, imagine if those storylines didn't exist. I think the heat would be so hot on Elias Pettersson from both sides. But nobody, like, there's not a single person that's talking about Elias Pettersson 4 games into the series, because there are front burner issues, the suspension, the fine, the McDavid treatment, all of that, I think, is benefiting Elias Pettersson, because 2 Canadian markets, massive media scrums. And I don't know, Harm, I haven't even seen Petey in the locker room. Like, he is keeping as low a profile right now. And again, I just think some of this benefits him, that nobody is talking about a guy that had 102 points a year ago and 89. We know his struggles. We've documented them on the Vancouver side, but I think the Edmonton media would be all over him if there weren't bigger issues for the home team in this series right now.
I wonder how much of that is just like, we don't have high expectations anymore. Been not great since the All-Star break, showed maybe some flashes late in the Nashville series, but
no,
obviously
you're totally right, Dave. I just think that, like, the outside media guys that maybe haven't, like, they just see Elias Pettersson as an all-star, and I think it would be a bigger deal, except that there are bigger deals. There are actually bigger deals in the here and now.
Yeah, and I imagine part of it too is they're winning, right? If the Canucks were down 2-1, like, I imagine a lot of that would be discussed. Shifting topics a little bit, one of the big storylines in Edmonton that I saw among the fan base after Game 3 and the Soucy McDavid incident was this idea around there was no pushback and where was the response. Now, Soucy being suspended for 1 game, I expect that to sort of cool the temperature a little bit. But still, especially in a media and fan market as hot as that, do you think that the Oilers will be in a mode of seeking a little bit of retribution in tonight's game?
I do. I think they have to be careful of, not veering from the script too far, because if they do take penalties, we've seen that the Canucks power plays coming to life here. But you're right. There's a fan base here that I think is demanding some, some blood. There's bloodlust in Edmonton that they abused Connor McDavid, and there was no real pushback. And I think the fans have voiced that, and the players have probably heard that. And again, I go back to, Evander Kane has been remarkably quiet. He's kind of had a running battle with Nikita Zadorov, but he's been on the wrong end and truly was on the wrong end of the big hit when he got thrown into the bench there the other night. I can't get over how little I've noticed Corey Perry through 3 games. Now, when 5 guys are playing half the game, there isn't a lot of ice time to go around for the others, but he's just been a complete non-factor. And not that I expected him to have a massive impact during the run of play, but I thought after every whistle, I thought he'd be in Silov's face. I thought he'd be a guy without a program. I'm not even sure I could find him right now. Desharnais, another big guy that can be physical. I do wonder if somebody on this Oiler team tries to take it upon themselves to challenge Nikita Zadorov to, which probably isn't the wisest thing, but at the same time, that's not a trade-off I want if I'm the Vancouver Canucks. I don't. Zadorov means too much to the Canucks right now, especially with Soucy out of the lineup tonight, to sit for 5 minutes against Evander Kane, who has been totally ineffective in this series. So I do wonder if the organization has had to talk to Zadorov in any way, because he's not afraid, obviously, and he's shown a willingness to stick up for teammates. But I do wonder if he could be goaded into a fight. I think that would be to the detriment of the Vancouver Canucks 4 games into a series in which they have a lead right now. So I wonder if the Oilers try to provoke a little bit more. Dakota Joshua with a massive hit on Ekholm early in the hockey game. Do you expect something? I guess I do expect somebody on the Oilers to try to lay that kind of hit on Quinn Hughes or whoever it is on the Vancouver Canucks. So yeah, I think that, look, it's spicy already through 3 games. And I think that we're just going to add a few more peppers to the pot here as this series goes along. And that's what we want, right? You want competitive hockey. You want storylines. I don't need Connor McDavid getting cross-checked in the face. So we'll see if lessons were learned there and if does that lower the temperature at all. But I just love the fact that this thing is unfolding the way that I had hoped it would between 2 Canadian franchises and 2 Canadian fan bases.
What'd you think of the suspension, the fine, the lack of fine on the Oilers side, anything like that? What'd you think of that?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I cross-checked to the face, even with the circumstances. And Carson Soucy's a pretty honest guy. You could tell, when we had the chance to talk to him, I think he showed some remorse. He was hoping that he'd be able to play tonight, but I'm not the least bit surprised that he gets a 1-game suspension. I just find it baffling, though, quite frankly, that there are 2 teams in this series. There were players on both sides involved at the end of the game, and only the Canucks get sanctioned, and 2 of them, the $5,000 fine, that's not a big deal. Zadorov laughed that off. But look, if you're the National Hockey League and you want to send a message, who better to send a message through than Connor McDavid? I'm not getting worked up. It was a slash to the pants. But if I'm the league, I'm making a statement about, we want to cut off the crap after the final buzzer. That, between the whistles, play hard. We've got referees that can call penalties, but after, it's not just a free-for-all after the final buzzer. And if you slap McDavid with a $5,000 fine, he can put it on his credit card before he leaves the building. The money's not the issue here. It's more just the league sort of trying to send a message through the best player on the planet. Because I thought they missed an opportunity with the Derek Ryan with the how you doing on Höglander in game 2. That was BS to me, and I thought the league could have come in after. And again, same thing. A fine's not going to be a big deal to the player, but it just shows that people at the league office are now watching. You've got a letter on your file, that kind of stuff. So, Zadorov's got stitches on the side of his eye. Hyman, people are, Hyman didn't make contact. It's not performative art at this point of the playoffs. He needed stitches, and he's a big dude. That's the definition of a high stick. If you're getting a cross check up onto the eye of Nikita Zadorov, that's a high stick. So I just thought that the league missed an opportunity here to send a message to both teams. And for whatever reason, and people can buy their own conspiracy theories, but it just does seem strange that the Canucks were the only ones that got slapped with any sort of action.
For the most part, it's felt like, from a Canucks perspective, looking at their blue line, that they've deployed the quote-unquote second and quote-unquote third pairs relatively even in terms of distributing the minutes. But without Soucy, Zadorov obviously bumping up, and now you've got Cole, who struggled in this series, and Juleson, who's only played 2 games in the last 6 weeks, would you load up on the second pair's minutes and try and shelter the third pair? What's your confidence level at with Cole and Juleson as a potential third pair?
Yeah, I think, Chris Knobloch is the last change here. This is going to be interesting to see with the matchups, because I think if I'm in his shoes and I'm splitting McDavid and Draisaitl, I probably try to get McDavid and his speed out against Myers and Zadorov, who have been known to take penalties, right? And attack with speed, see if you get some stick calls there. That would leave Draisaitl, who is such a physical beast, against Hughes and Hronek, if you can get that matchup, or against Cole and Juleson, obviously. But if you're just looking at, the Canucks are trying to counter and playing their top four a little bit more in this hockey game, it's Quinn Hughes is just at a physical disadvantage. If he's trying to match up, he can use his smarts and his positioning and all that kind of stuff. But Draisaitl leans on guys a lot bigger than Quinn Hughes and is able to have success there. So I am really curious to see what the Oilers do with last change and their matchup. And, to answer your question, Harm, about confidence, yeah, I mean, it's been a bit tough go for Ian Cole. It has. And now, he's moving back to his natural side, we think. So maybe that puts him in a bit more of a comfort zone. Juleson gives you what he can. And Noah Juleson has resurrected his NHL career at the very least. But he's also shown that he's the seventh guy when they're fully healthy here. So that's a tough spot. I mean, the Canucks have done a remarkable job in this series and really all season with that whole next man up thing. I think guys like Juleson believe in that, when an opportunity presents itself, you step in and you don't have to be the star, but just don't let the group down either. And I don't expect that Noah Juleson's going to let this group down. He can be physical. He's not afraid, blocks a ton of shots, eats pucks that way. Again, you hope the Canucks don't get into penalty problems, but if they do, he's going to be counted on to kill some penalties against the best power play in the National Hockey League. So it's a tough spot, but we saw Nils Amon got thrown into that same deal, and he was killing penalties in the third period of a tight game, and he hadn't played in a while either. So, the blueprint's there, and we'll see if next man up just continues to serve the Canucks well here in these playoffs.
Jeff, just before we let you go, I know Zach Cassian's on Rink Wide tonight, so people can look forward to that. And of course, you're going to be on Rink Wide, as you always are. People can also look forward to that. But I was thinking about this recently, just the playoffs that JT Miller has had. And it feels like he's kind of becoming someone that we're not talking enough about. Just the idea of him being a leader on this team and doing everything that he does while putting up points. What can you say about JT Miller and his playoff performance so far?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Obviously had an incredible regular season, but this is another guy that I think thinks he was built for playoff hockey, and he's proving it on a nightly basis. But you're right. Like, his offensive contributions are sort of flying under the radar. He's had back-to-back 2-assist games. So he's not scoring maybe as much, but he's setting up others, and there's certainly value in that. And again, I just think that right now we glom on to the hottest of hot topics, and a guy that's kind of just consistently really good for the Canucks. That's not all that sexy. He just shows up, he plays, and he performs on a nightly basis. But where's the controversy? Where are the hot takes around that? And so it kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. But, this guy absolutely is the heartbeat of the Canucks, wears his emotions on his sleeve, gets involved physically, but also has the skill that we've seen in his time in Vancouver to be one of the offensive thrusts of this hockey club. But, Brock is kind of stealing some of the limelight with the playoffs that he is having, and I'm sure JT is just fine with that. But yeah, I think that's really all it is that there are other guys, good and bad, that maybe have stood out, and drawn our attention. And just through it all, JT has continued to find that same consistency that he had in the regular season. He's not running too hot. Like, we've seen that in the past. Like, even as these games heat up and the temperature of the games rises, he's playing within the rules. He's not hurting the team. We're not seeing frustration when they're down. And in fact, you've heard her talk about, like, think about game one when they were down by 3, and Tocchet loved the bench. Because there was this belief, I think, in years gone by, a guy like JT could sour a little bit, and maybe there isn't that great energy in the body language and everything else, but, guys take their cue off him, and he's had a really good playoff run, even it has been sort of understated, which is a word that we just generally don't associate with a guy like JT Miller.
Jeff, great stuff as always. As I mentioned, Zach Cassian on Rink Wide Vancouver tonight. People can find it shortly after the final buzzer, and you'll be joining live from Edmonton. Good stuff, Jeff. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks.
There he is, Jeff Paterson, who, as I mentioned a few times, and I will continue to mention every time he's on the show, you can find him on Rink Wide Vancouver. Great product. Best post-game show in the business, if you ask me. And yeah, like I said, Zach Cassian is going to join the show. Shane O'Brien. A lot of people really like Shane O'Brien on the last episode. We've had Eddie Lack on the show. Yeah, really, really good product going over there at Rink Wide Vancouver. So be sure to check it out. Jeff is going to join live from Edmonton. Okay, Harm, before we get to anyone else, we're going to take a quick break solely because I need to blow my nose. I don't know if people saw it. I had to mute myself and duck my head while I was while we were midway in that interview, but let's take a quick break while I go blow my nose.
And now, a word from helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca. Everybody knows about the overdose crisis, also known as the toxic drug crisis. But what's less known is that the stigma around addiction makes it harder to ask for help. And that's got to stop. Addiction is a complex health condition, not a choice. And that means people shouldn't have to face judgment at work or from their loved ones or fear the law. But shame and stigma can cause a person to hide their drug use or use alone, and we don't want that. People shouldn't be afraid to reach out. There are supports available and can help to know where to start. The government of BC is partnering with organizations like the Nation Network to help extend this message throughout our province. If you or someone you care about is struggling, you can find support and services near you at helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca.
Okay, let's get to, let's get to anyone else, presented by the Vancouver Canadians. The great spring weather is here, and it's time to get out to the net to catch your Vancouver Canadians in action. The Seas are on the road, but have a 6-game homestand starting on Tuesday, May 28th, which includes a superstar appearance from Buck Martinez on the 28th, a nooner at the net on Friday, May 31st, and a family fun Sunday on June 2nd. Catch fireworks, giveaways, Friday nooners, and superstar appearances all spring and summer long. Get your tickets by calling 604-872-5232 or go to canadiansbaseball.com. Okay. Harm, few different things that I wanted to get to. Let's kick off anyone else. And we've got some listener questions. So folks, get your anyone else's into the YouTube live chat. But we have to start, I think, with Nikita Zadorov this morning, who didn't speak yesterday, but today gave his thoughts on the Soucy suspension. I just want to quickly say this because I think it was Ryan Rashog over at TSN tweeted it out yesterday that it was really weird that the Canucks didn't make Nikita Zadorov available. And I saw someone reply to it and say, oh, well, they're just training him. They're giving him media training so that he doesn't say anything that's going to be too controversial or get him fined or anything. First of all, I know that's not true. I know that's not what was happening. And I became sure of it once I heard him speak today at Canucks Morning Skate. Let's pull it up, Grady.
Yeah, it is a big part of our team. Obviously, it's a big loss for us. My thought on that, I mean, I've been thinking for a couple of days. I mean, unfortunately, that's the word we're living in. Sometimes, social media and the public views can create some hard decisions for specific people, and they might make questionable decisions at the end of the day. That's how I look at it. At the end of the day, they have to protect their investment. So that's my understanding in this situation for sure.
Do you think that?
Okay, now there's a video too. There's also a video of him adding to this a little bit here. Pull this video up, Grady.
Stitches by your eye, is that from the end of the game?
Yeah.
So how come they're not protecting you?
Well, I guess I don't make that much money for the league. I don't know.
So context there, the second answer he gave, credit to Sportsnet's Ian McIntyre. What a great question of how come they aren't protecting you? Because first, Murph asks him if the cut on his eye, which is pretty damn close to his actual eyeball, that stitch, that's where he needed stitches after getting the cross-check from Zach Hyman. Ian asks, how come they're not protecting you? And Zadorov gave the quote of, well, I guess I don't make enough money for the league, make the league enough money. So great stuff from Nikita Zadorov. He's a walking quote machine. Absolutely love that guy, especially over at Canucks Army. Re-sign him right now. I need content like this for years to come.
I mean, right off the bat, right? I always appreciate when players actually speak their mind. Like, we need more of this. We need more outspoken players. We need more players that are fine being the villain, like how earlier in the series, Zadorov took a shot at the city of Edmonton and basically said, well, there's nothing else to do besides watch hockey. Like, you love that stuff for the game to grow it. I mean, look at the NBA. Like, I get so fixated on covering this game that sometimes I'll veer over into, like, I'll listen to an NBA podcast or something. Well, like, players themselves have podcasts, which is kind of crazy. Don't have that in the NHL. Or there'll just be like podium interviews or walk-off interviews, and these NBA guys talk their smack, man. It's awesome.
Dude,
and yeah,
you know what Zadorov reminded me of there was Giannis Antetokounmpo with the Bucks coming out, and his quote was he's asked about the refs or something, and he goes, "What's the fine? How much do I have to pay if I talk bad about the refs?" And then the reporter's like, 20,000. Like, oh, 20,000? No, I'm not going to talk about it. It's like the best way. It's like you find the loophole of how you can talk about the officiating, how you can talk about the Department of Player Safety. Like, what are they going to do? The Department of Player Safety can't hand out a fine for the NHL, can't fine Zadorov for talking about how they're not good at giving out fines and discipline, right? Like, maybe they could, but it's a bad look for the league at the end of the day. I like that. I like that from Zadorov.
he also did it in such a measured, calculated way where he's not going to get in trouble with the league. He made his point, but didn't put himself into trouble. And I mean, he does have a point. I mean, on yesterday's show, I brought up that, hey, if this had happened to Fogle instead of McDavid in terms of the receiving end of Soucy's cross-check, this arguably isn't a suspension. It's probably just a fine.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the other thing is I was having this conversation with Bag Milk over at Oilers Nation yesterday about the fines, the discipline, and all that. And obviously Zadorov laughed off the fine, but I'm not losing sleep. I'm not worried at all about the idea that, oh, I can't believe Zach Hyman didn't get fined $5,000. First of all, we know his dad's probably going to pay it anyway. And second of all, like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, even if Zach Hyman didn't have filthy rich parents, he'd be able to pay that himself just fine. It's like, that's why Zadorov laughed it off today. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. I do agree with Jeff, though, that, you know, it does send the message and you need to at least do that. But again, it didn't happen. It's not a big deal. I don't want to talk about it any more than we already have.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yesterday was the day to analyze it. If Canucks fans, you had any complaints or criticism, absolutely air it out. But today we needed to move on and just kind of let it go. We're up. Canucks are up 2-1 in the series. They're well positioned.
Okay, let's get to all of the anyone else's that we have in the chat here. We've got a few, and I'm going to scroll up. We've got an Oilers fan in the chat giving us the scouting report on Calvin Pickard. So, yeah, nice to see. We're getting some Oilers fans helping us out with the Pickard stuff, but I know all about Calvin Pickard. I've watched him for years, seen him in the AHL as well, and this Oilers fan did say Pickard is positionally strong, tracks the puck well, absolutely correct, held the Hawks in the hunt until Crawford returned. He was also the goalie, the most notable thing, I think, he was the goalie that got selected by Vegas in the expansion draft, and then he never played a game for Vegas. They flipped him, but yeah. The other thing about Pickard, though, and I don't know who he's talking about with the Hawks here. I don't know if you have the right guy here, but Pickard never played for the Hawks.
Is this an Oilers fan sabotaging us?
Well, I'm trying to think if he's talking about what are they called in Seattle? Not the Seahawks. Yeah, the Thunderbirds. Okay, so that was a different. Which Hawks is he talking about? He's never played for a team named the Hawks. But I've watched a lot of Calvin Pickard. I do think he's a good goalie. I do think he's an upgrade on Stuart Skinner, especially with the way that Stuart Skinner's played in these playoffs. I like the decision to go to. I like to go with Calvin Pickard here.
Yeah, I thought about it last night because on yesterday's show we sort of discussed it, and my initial thought was I don't know, but then I really considered it, and the biggest takeaway that I had was at this point Stuart Skinner seems rattled mentally. Right? Like, he just seems like the moment is a little bit too big for him right now. Of course, he was sort of so heated up that he couldn't even face the media after the game, which the day after he obviously apologized. But with Pickard, at least he has a fresh mental, who knows how he's actually going to perform. But that, I think the mental side of it and fresh slate there is one of the biggest reasons I think the Oilers made the right call in going with Pickard there.
Yeah, I absolutely like the decision. And I don't know what the conversations among Oilers fans are, because I talked to some Oilers fans and they liked the decision to they would have liked to keep Stuart Skinner in net. This is his net, that kind of thing. But I just think it's been a tough go for Skinner, and it's not a small sample size either, right? Like, not just against the Canucks, but just in the playoffs in general. It's not a small sample size anymore. So I like the decision to go to Calvin Pickard. Okay, let's get anyone else's in here. We had one that I wanted to get to. I mean, there's people talking about the cockiness of Oilers fans before the series, and I'll remind Canucks fans, the series is not over. Don't get yourselves too cocky here. But someone else pointing out that the Canucks have now won 6 of their last 7 games against the Oilers. The Oilers have obviously won 1 game in this series. This one from Vin XD. What about Demko? I thought I saw something about him being available if this series comes to game 6 or 7. Should Tocchet put him in or wait, or would it be a game-to-game decision? I think the latest, and I'm not trying to report anything here because I'm just looking at his progression, and correct me if I'm wrong, Harm, has Demko been a part of any practices or morning skates or anything? Because I think all of his work has been not fielding pucks. He's not been taking pucks on him, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, he hasn't practiced with the main group.
So he's got to do that a few times, folks, before he gets back in. And if you think about it, obviously game 4 is tonight. Game 5 would be Thursday. Do you think Demko's ready for Saturday? I would say no, absolutely not. If he hasn't really taken shots yet, that's just not where he's at in his progression. But hey, if he's able to start taking shots, maybe tomorrow, late this week, maybe he's ready for the next round if the Canucks get there. But I would be surprised if we see him in this series.
I also we're getting late for him to have not even joined the main practice group yet. And the idea of him only having a couple of, let's say, practice sessions and then immediately airdropping him into game 7 if the Canucks get to that point, I don't like that idea at all, to be honest, especially given how well Shelovs has played recently.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Is there anyone else? Oh, Grady's got some in here. Okay, here we go. Vin XD again. Should Tocchet consider shaking up EP40 and pair him up with different players? If so, who? I'm going to say no. You keep your lineup the way it is.
Yeah, you're not going to break up the Miller line or the Lindholm line right now. So there's not much else you can do with Paterson in terms of giving him better wingers.
Yeah. This one from Nar. I'd be curious to hear someone from player safety explain why Soucy's crosscheck was suspendable, but not Hyman's on Zadorov. Am I missing something? Is Hyman's not worse? Hyman's is more premeditated. I don't know. I don't know how Zadorov's fine. I guess maybe it created more danger. That's what I pointed out yesterday. Zadorov's crosscheck to the back was just a crosscheck to the back, but it created a dangerous situation for Connor McDavid.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't want to rehash this.
We did say we'd stop talking about it, didn't we?
and to be honest, the only video that I saw on the Hyman crosscheck, first of all, I didn't get I didn't replay it a bunch, so I can't frame by frame analyze what happened on that. And it was kind of grainy too, you know what I mean? So I don't really want to rehash that because I sort of understand where Canucks fans are coming from, but nothing happened there. It is what it is. You deal with it. You move on.
We've got Jesse E in the chat, not to be confused with Jesse C, who is a regular listener of our show. Jesse E, I think, is an Oilers fan. I think I'm right there. But pointing out, again, Calvin Pickard. A lot of Calvin Pickard love. Pickard is 12-7 and starts this year. We keep hearing it. Calvin Pickard. I like Calvin Pickard. I really do. And yeah, he spoke to the media today. He's an even keel guy. He said the right things. I like Calvin Pickard. I like Stuart Skinner too. It doesn't mean they're good goalies. I think Calvin Pickard's a better goalie than Stuart Skinner right now, though. So, hopefully for the Oilers, they're hoping that Calvin Pickard is going to be able to give them better goaltending than what they got from Stuart Skinner so far in this series. All right. Do you want to close it out there? Did you have any final thoughts before we close out? We'll be back at the Wall Center tomorrow. Are you going to be back at the Wall Center tomorrow? Or are you flying tomorrow?
Yeah, I am flying, but I believe my flight lands at 12:17 in at YVR. It's gonna be a little tight, but
Cutting it
we'll
close.
see.
Cutting it close. We'll see. We'll see if you make it. We'll see. Hopefully you make it. You should be good.
Well,
You
if
should be
not,
good.
my house is at least really close from the airport, so
That's
at
true.
the very least, I'll be available remote.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. Okay, let's take it. It's an easy one today. It's a very easy one today. Canucks plus 170 on the money line. I would call that a heavy underdog. They're heavy underdogs heading in tonight. Plus 170 to win in any fashion. That's what we're taking today on our Bet365 bet of the day. But we'll close it out there. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Grady Sass, my name is Dave Quadrelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation with Harman and Quads, brought to you by the Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X's fresh look is just an added bonus to its range, since you can drive up to 406 kilometers on a single charge. That's enough to get you from Kitsilano to Whistler or Kamloops to Kelowna and back, and still be home in time for the game. Now that's what we'd call electric. The best part, by choosing electric, you can get up to $11,000 in rebates and incentives. The BZ4X are in stock and selling quickly, so make sure to visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer to get your hands on one. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.